Are we on? Ready to roll? Okay. All right, I'd like to bring this meeting to order. If we'd all stand, we salute the flag. Darrell, you want to lead us?
Sure. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. Start by the approval of minutes of January 12th. Anyone have a motion to accept the minutes?
Move that we accept the minutes of January 12th.
Second.
Any further discussion? If none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Announcements. The Select Board will meet on the following dates. We'll have the regular meetings at 6 p.m., February 9th and February 23rd. Work review sessions prior to the regular meetings will start at 5 p.m. Work session meetings at 5 p.m. are scheduled for February 2nd and Tuesday, February 17th. All of the above meetings will be held in the Town Hall unless otherwise posted. The town budget hearing will be held on Thursday, January 29th at 6 p.m. in the Town Hall. If needed, a second and final budget hearing will be held on Wednesday, February 4th at 6 p.m. in the Town Hall. The Plymouth Elementary School budget hearing will be held at 7 p.m. on February 2nd at the elementary school. Pemmy-Baker Regional School District annual deliberative meeting will be held on 6:30 p.m. on February 3rd at the Plymouth Regional High School. And the weather observations for the month of December are available in the Town Hall. Under agenda review, is there anybody have anything they want to add? If none, move along. Visitors tonight. Updates, any appointments, no appointments. Land use permit announcements, we have a few here. Tammy and Jason Murray of 7 Page Street has been approved. step, slab, and replacement windows. Jeffrey Levesque, 60 Main Street, exterior sign, it's been approved. Wayne Conroy, 9 Main Street, exterior sign, that's been approved. And the Bridge House, 260 Highland Street, solar panels, and that's been approved. From the chairman's comments, I'd like to bring to the audience attention that we have quite a few zoning amendments that will be on the ballot, and quite extensive, quite a bit of reading. And we're suggesting that you try to educate yourself on these amendments prior to the voting. We'll have stuff posted on the PB Cam. Town clerk's office can get you, will be able to give you information. Be on our website. We'll have them posted at the recycling center. Brian and Miriam in the town office will be able to help and answer some of the questions. We'll have it posted on our bulletin board. And we'll also be reading this at our public budget hearing. Our budget is done. You'll be able to pick it up, copies of the budget tomorrow after 10 a.m. And I'd like to announce that we are $71,987 in the good, or should I say less than last year's budget. So we were able to bring this year's budget in under by $71,987. And I would just like to thank all the department heads, the administration, the staff, and everything for doing a very, very diligent job and helping us accomplish this. Also, last work session, we had the nonprofits were before us, and we had a nonprofits committee come forward, give us their suggestions. We had the nonprofits were here and participated in the session. And after the session, we went into further discussion, and we have come up, and I would just like to announce what we have done for the nonprofits. I'd like to start off by saying that we were able to increase what we had done for them last year. We increased it by 25%, which I think is outstanding under this economic times. Like I said, the staff worked very hard in going back and looking at where we could come up with some money. We know some of these, because of the economy, we know that some of these nonprofits are going to be hit as hard as anyone. And so the board took that into consideration, and we increased it by over 25% over last year, which I have mentioned is pretty good under this situation. I'll read what we've done for the nonprofits individually. The Caddy organization, $3,000. The Genesis Behavioral Health, $3,000. The Grafton County Senior Citizen Council, $10,000. Main Street Plymouth, $3,000. The Pemmy Baker Home Health and Hospice, $10,000. Pemmy Youth Center, $3,000. Plymouth Regional Clinic, $2,000. Voice Against Violence, $3,000. Tri-County Community Action, $3,500. Mid-State Health Center, $3,000. Friends of the Art, $100. And that's it. Did I miss any?
No.
Which brings the total to $43,500 for the nonprofits.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could I just add to thank the Nonprofit Review Committee, and just to let people know we had a wonderful discussion at our work session with a number of the nonprofits that came, and I felt they were very understanding of the plight that we discussed with the few number of taxpayers in town and the regional nature of a lot of the services. So we had a discussion about fairness and how much we can actually expect the people of Plymouth to pay into these for the wonderful services. And I want to emphasize that everybody here fully appreciates the value of the nonprofits to our community. And in this very hard hit times, economic times, we realize that they are going to be relied on a lot more maybe than they would in better times. So this board very much appreciates the recommendations that we had from our nonprofit committee, but because of other considerations and because of the belt tightening we were able to do and other aspects of the budget, we felt that we could give a little more than was recommended. So I don't want to insult anybody. You know, we have people asking for more, and we had requests or the grant amounts for less. But the board tried to find a reasonable number to be fair to all of our nonprofits and let them know that we fully appreciate their contribution to the community. And we're hopeful that we can all get through this next year in good stead.
Thank you, Patrice. Anybody else have any comments? All right. Under approved purchase orders, we have none. New purchase orders? None. One like that.
You have a new purchase order?
I do? Oh, I'm sorry. James? Come forward, Jane. This is the Radiant Communications, $2,618 miscellaneous broadcasting equipment.
Yes. As you may recall, last year we got a grant from the state of New Hampshire Homeland Security. It was to buy the playback server that's currently running Channel 3. And the reason that we got grant money from Homeland Security is because it has emergency messaging capabilities. So if we have a flood warning or if there's some other emergency we need to get out, parking bans during the winter, we can actually set police dispatch up to do that on their own, and it doesn't involve me coming in to do it, and they can put it up immediately. Depending on the severity of the emergency, there are different levels of how that can be controlled, but they would have access to do that. But we need to get the server into a location that has internet access. Also, the server can control 2 channels at once, so we can use the same piece of equipment to control both Channel 3 and Channel 20. And that means that we can also put emergency messages out on both simultaneously, with only the effort of doing it over essentially one channel. So to do that, we have to get the cable cast portion of Channel 3 that's currently here. We have to get that over into the library where my office is, get both channels operating on that. But obviously we want to keep the live feed here at Town Hall, so when we have a meeting going on live, it can still go out live over the channel. So what we need to do is we need to buy this transmitter and receiver and the assorted jumpers that go with it so that we can actually keep this jump intact. Currently the cable goes from here and it actually passes through the library before it goes up to Adelphia's head end. So we're really lucky there. Basically all we have to do is break the fiber there, splice in the new equipment, these transceivers, and then send the signal over to my office, and then we can control which channel it goes out on over there. It won't really affect operations. Everything will stay essentially the same, but the server will be operating both channels. We'll have emergency messaging in a location that's remotely accessible by the police department or whoever we set up, town hall, highway, even the schools if we want to set the school district up to do their own closings locally. So people don't have to go watch everyone in the state on Channel 9. They can watch it on Channel 3 or Channel 20 and just see their own town. So this is just this equipment is needed to keep the live feed here, but to break the connection to the library and put the server there so that we have the emergency messaging and we keep sort of the remote accessibility portion of the grant intact. Because really that was what Homeland Security liked most about the grant project, was that we were instituting this new emergency messaging system and we're giving some control to the police dispatch to do that on their own so that it could be instantaneous in the case of an emergency. There will be a little bit more work done. Time Warner has to do separately from Radiant. We'll have to do some wiring, but I've been told verbally sort of an official quote of under $500 to do that work. So Time Warner actually got the quote for us because they can get better pricing than we can. And obviously we have to use equipment that's compatible with their system, so we went with the quote that they gave us, and it's fairly reasonable.
What's the relationship between Time and Adelphia?
Time Warner bought out Adelphia,
Okay.
so.
And so the wires are university or town, the fiber?
Oh, the fiber is I don't know if the town owns, I think it's Adelphia's, we basically own everything up to their box, but once it hits the box, the cabling is theirs.
Okay, so
I believe.
the police dispatch will...
It's all over the internet, so as long as they have internet access, then over the internet, they can get into the unit, log in with a secure password, username and password, and then we can sort of control different levels. So in theory, we could even set town departments up to, manage their own slides on the bulletin board and things like that too, but for that to all happen, it has to be in a location that has internet access so that people can access it through a web browser.
It's
So-
a private network.
It's over the internet, so it's a public.
But
It'll be
virtual
the server will be
VPN.
on a private network, and it'll be behind a firewall.
Okay.
But they'll be accessing it over the internet, so it'll be open to the public essentially, but only on limited ports and behind a firewall.
Okay.
So.
This completes our commitment so that I can get our reimbursement from Homeland Security.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd just like to say great initiative on getting those funds.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, for this.
This was sort of a cooperative effort, really, between all of the department heads, but especially the fire chief and I at the time. Buddy, who was the chief at the time, really sort of took the ball with us and got it. And actually, Homeland Security, no one else in the state has done this, so Plymouth is sort of setting, Homeland Security loved the project. They sort of consider it a pilot project for the state, and they're hoping other towns will follow our lead, so
Great.
we're sort of opening the door for other communities to do the same.
Well, thanks for knowing about all this stuff. I don't understand it at all. I'm glad you do.
Can I get a motion?
I move the approval of the purchase order for $2,618.
And seconded by Charlie. Any further discussion? If none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Committee reports. John?
There wasn't much going on as far as the planning board is concerned, except for the various warrants, and I won't get into those because, as you mentioned, they are pretty intense, and I think people should read them by themselves.
Chairman?
I attended the Plymouth Village Water and Sewer District meeting on the 13th of January. And there were some significant things involved. First of all, they appointed, Carol Elliott has resigned her commission seat to take over as the treasurer with the death of, what's his name, Jim Moore. So she is now the treasurer. I don't know if that's a term she has to run for, but she's taken a different position. And the board simultaneously appointed Stephen Call to her seat. He'll serve 6 weeks and then have to run for the balance of her term, which is 2 years. In addition, Judy DeLeo's term is up, so she runs for 3 years. And next year, Dick Flanders will take over as chairman. They rotate their chairmanship. Stephen Call is a fairly impressive, there was a very good article about him in the Record Enterprise last week, that he's got a strong environmental background, and coincidentally, he would appear to be a very good choice in light of what Main Street Plymouth is trying to accomplish, or Tom Saman is trying to accomplish with Main Street on this, investigating the possibilities of running a sewer line to Ashland, which Tom's a little more intense, and I told him after the last meeting, I thought he was he was singing in the wrong church or to the wrong choir, but he's got to get the water and sewer district involved. They have attempted to have meetings with the Ashland commissioners and also the Ashland selectmen, because over there the water and sewer district is owned by the town, so the selectmen are going to have a part in this thing if it ever happens. In addition, the district has proposed a change. They have a rate increase that will be discussed at their annual meeting in March. And there were two proposals. The increase, first increase is based on the current usage of a 10,000 gallon minimum. And they've had a lot of people complaining because they don't use more than 3,000 or 4,000 gallons, and they thought they were, the initial rate was too high. So they, in an attempt to accommodate, I think she said roughly 60 ratepayers, they came up with a proposal that has a 5,000 gallon minimum. Proposal A and Proposal B, where the basic charge on A is $56.70, and the basic charge on B is $28.65. It's a little higher per gallon than it on the 10,000. And they voted to, they're going to support the Proposal B rate at their annual meeting, which will be a slight increase for the 10,000 gallon user on a per gallon basis, but it will accommodate these 60 people that are, and so I think that was, they made some significant progress on that. Other than that, there wasn't much else going on, but it was a fairly active meeting. In addition, on the 16th, I went to the Main Street Plymouth meeting, where Judy Gove, for health reasons, has stepped down as chair. She's still going to be active, but Tom Saman has taken over as chairman of the board of directors. Tom has said he's issued a document called the Plymouth Ashland Interceptor Concept, which is it's a 2-page document on this proposal to transport the sewerage from Plymouth to Ashland, it's a long-term project, but one of the things about Stephen Call is I think he's very good at grant money. And he's also an environmentalist and understands the implications of moving this thing to Ashland. Ashland evidently has surplus capacity of 60 to 80% because of this, what's the company down there?
The paper mill.
It was the woolen package.
Yeah, the woolen mill. But there's a lot of political activity that's going to have to be overcome in order for this thing to happen. And I told Tom, keep us informed, but I don't really think it's an issue that's going to be dealt with by this board, other than to be brought up to date on a periodic basis. And Dick Flanders pretty much agrees that we first have to get the Ashland people together with the Plymouth Village Water and Sewer District. And with this new board member, I think some of the money issues could be part of the discussion, because he's evidently pretty good at getting grants for environmental projects like this. It's going to be interesting. I kind of support the idea, but it's so long-term, and it really doesn't, involve the Board of Selectmen. It does in Ashland because of the relationship between the two, the water and sewer and the town. But in the long run, it would really solve a big problem here. other than the $8 million, no big issue to get over. But, so anyway, that's something I'll keep abreast of and report on as it progresses.
Thanks, John. Patrice?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Charlie a question
Yeah.
first? Charlie, do you know the appointment for Steve Call? Do you know if that's going to be, are we going to vote on that at the election? You said that it was for 2 years, Carol Elliott's
He's been
vacancy?
appointed, and he will serve through the end of this year and then run for the
Okay,
balance of Carol
Carol's term.
Elliott's
Okay,
term.
Right, I just wanted to clarify
I'm
that.
not sure whether Carol Elliott is an elected officer appointed.
The treasurer? Yeah, I don't know
I think
that either.
it may be elected, but I don't know.
Okay, I just wondered because I didn't know, I hadn't seen any posting or vacancy or
No,
anything.
I
so-
asked Dick about that. They didn't advertise
Okay,
it because.
so it's an appointment
Yeah.
until it can be,
Right.
the vacancy.
He'll run for the balance of the 2 years, and then simultaneously, Judy DeLeo is up for a 3-year term.
Uh-huh.
And as they
Okay.
say, they rotate the chair, so Dick Flanders will be back in the chair next year.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, I just have to report, I will be attending the Ashland meeting tomorrow evening. Charlie, maybe you'll want to go with me, on regionalization of services. I ran into the three of the Ashland selectmen this morning at Representative Hall. I attended a briefing that Congressman Hodes held on the stimulus package. I thought it was very good. I was very favorably impressed by Congressman Hodes. He was very informative. He gave out a sheet on the kind of things we can expect. According to him, the House bill right now, is $825 billion that they are looking to pass on through the federal government to the state governments. He expects New Hampshire to be about $300 million to be available through some kind of grant projects. But according to Congressman Hodes, he was very concerned about the lack of accountability in the bill, and he was there really to ask, which I really give him credit for. He invited all local officials to come and speak to him to raise any of their concerns. And there were some very good concerns raised about matching funds for these grants. He noted that New Hampshire is in much better state than many of the other states because we have a thrifty history and that we don't usually overspend money that we don't have and ask for things that we don't need. So we're starting out the recession in a much better position. But there's no money in this bailout package for any homeowners or for the mortgage crisis, which he feels is really at the root of the problem. So when I went up to him after, I waited till all the questions were over and just told him I really didn't understand how government spending, giving governments more money to spend at this time would really be very helpful. And he told me he didn't really understand it either, but that he voted against the bill twice and it passed. So he was doing his job, delivering the message to the people, and I was very impressed with his staff as far as helping us prepare grants. They would be very supportive, and New Hampshire will just be competing with every other state, and Plymouth would compete with every other small town in New Hampshire for whatever funds do become available to us. And I noted for our community, there's funding available that might be helpful for our fire and rescue buildings, the school education programs. One of the big pluses, I think, was bringing up the special ed funding from what it's been stagnated at 17% commitment to about 25%. That will be helpful. There is a rural water and waste disposal funding grant. So I just bring those up as things, and also for libraries. So there may be something that we can apply for that would be helpful on some of the projects that we've been contemplating. But I found him and his staff very impressive, and I think we have somebody who's working very hard for our district.
How much is the grant? How much grant money is available for?
He believes $300 million of hard dollars would be available to New Hampshire. But the total package of the bailout right now in the House, which is going to the Senate, he doesn't know what's going to happen, but $825 billion.
Is that on top of the $350 billion that we've already put in?
Yes, that's on top, and it doesn't include about $285 billion that he believes will also come through in tax credits and tax cuts. But the big thing to note is that the money's going to be going through the already existing federal and state channels. So all of the programs, it's not, that's my question, is it's intended to create jobs. It really is funding already existing programs.
Now, this thing in Ashland, is that something they just called, or?
No, that we got
We got a letter on it.
notice of, that they wanted to have a discussion about cooperation, just regionalization of
Is
services.
that between the select boards or just anybody that wants to?
I think they sent it to all the select boards in, or town officials in surrounding towns. And it's at the elementary school, if we can talk about it. There you go.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Tomorrow night.
Daryl?
I have a meeting later this week with the library building committee to find out where they're at on fundraising efforts, getting started there. And earlier today, I had a meeting with a professor at PSU who's doing some research that is very close at hand to bringing some grant money to the area. And hopefully she'll speak in the public comments after, but however you want to do that. But it's a connection to Steve Call's efforts with the river as well. So I'll leave that for her later.
He made an interesting comment in that article paper. He said when we first walked down Green Street, he realized that using the river as a resource, Main Street is facing the wrong direction. Basically, the back of Main Street faces the river. So he's big on the the environmental, the use of waterfront and stuff like that, which I think, given when Main Street was built and the sewage treatment was plunk right down in the middle, the river was really a resource for disposing of all sorts of things. And since that's been cleaned up, it's become a resource for recreation, et cetera. And I think this is where he could be a real expert.
Well, this will be interesting because there's a lot of funding that'll go behind research that's targeted toward the taxpayer population that we can use. We can get funding for the research and use the research to then get adjoining funds, but I'll leave that.
All right. Anybody else have anything else to report? Okay, if nothing, under other business, bring up that we need to, like to form a committee to review the personnel policy.
I'd love to be on that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right.
I'm dying to be on that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would also volunteer to be on it, but I'm wondering if, when it would occur, probably after town meeting. I just think that it should be comprised of a number of the employees too.
Yeah.
But I also just wanted to make sure for the record that when we had a discussion in non-public session and realized that there is a provision, at least one provision, if not more, provisions that needed to be fixed in the personnel matter, and that we did vote to fix some of the language regarding the health care stipend in the manual as it currently is, and noted that there's other policies that the board has passed that affect personnel that are not in the latest edition. So the actual manual definitely needs to be updated. It would include a fraud policy that was passed 2 years ago, and it would have the hopefully new contract that will be a tentative agreement for that would also be included. But I think it's going to take a lot of cooperation and reading through by different department heads to catch a number of the outdated or obsolete provisions that need to be corrected because of changes in law.
Would it be fitting to call for a townsperson who might be a HR professional to just a citizens committee? I'm not sure who that would be, but somebody in town who works in HR at that
Yeah,
executive level could maybe.
I think that would be good, great. So if it's not
Do you
something.
want one selectman or two?
I think two, and, you know, town administrator or Kate and a number of employees. I think it's definitely going to be an involved process because there's a lot to go through.
I'd like to volunteer.
Charlie? Okay, Darrell and Charlie. Okay. All right.
I don't think we need a vote, we just need,
Right.
we want to have an intention to form a committee and
Yeah.
work on this in the future.
Right. We will get quite involved, I'm sure. It took a while to put that together, didn't it, Paul?
Yes, it did.
All right. Down to public comments. Anybody have any from the public? Yes.
I'm Martha Copperthorne, and I'm a member of the Genesis board, and I just want to thank the selectmen for increasing our funding this year. It's greatly appreciated, and as you know, greatly needed.
Great.
Appreciated.
Well, thank you. Yes, Frank.
Was the appointment of the PSU officer, was that delayed or set aside, or?
That's been
Didn't
set
it
aside.
happen?
Set aside.
Do you have an older agenda, Frank? It's been set aside.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Deborah John, and I am the researcher from Plymouth State that was referred to related to some work that we're going to be doing in the Plymouth community. And I've come to answer any questions that anyone might have about the research and about the outcomes of the research and about how we might support the grant writing process to secure some potential funding for the Plymouth community related to resources for healthy eating and active living specific to the community.
So you're doing a study regarding the health of the citizens.
No, I can maybe share a little bit about the
Yes,
project.
come on up.
Yeah, okay, great. Earlier this year, we received some funding from the CDC to do some work in rural communities related to access for rural community members to healthy eating and active living opportunities. The funding was from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and the three communities that we will be working in are Plymouth, Rumney, and Warren. So the work in Plymouth is basically targeting full-time community members, people who live here year-round, in age or life stage categories of young adults, people, young families with potentially children in school or anticipating having children in the school system, middle adults, people whose children are leaving the school system, maybe empty nesters whose children are in college at that life stage, young, older adults, people who are closer to retirement age and perhaps early retirees, finding some that they're to the end of their career life, but still very active and very much involved in community life, and older adults. Typically, the older adults who access services like the senior center and some of the other services available in the community, and asking them to help us document the resources in the community, in the Plymouth community, that they perceive as either opportunities for health behavior, for being healthy, or obstacles to being healthy. And the process is a process where the community members actually photograph the community and then tell us about the community and the narrative in terms of their own perceptions. The process is that each group comes together in a homogeneous group at each life stage, and then there's a bigger town meeting kind of forum where everyone is invited, including people from the community who want to share information and give us a narration for the images that the townspeople have taken. From this information, and it's a lot of information, we basically go in and do a needs assessment, a resource assessment, and then provide that document back to the community. So you, the municipal agents, or stakeholders, the Main Street organization, and a number of other organizations who are primary stakeholders will have a document that identifies what the townspeople consider either opportunities for health and for being healthy or barriers for being healthy. And then from that can be actually integrated into your town plan to think about ways that you might address some of those barriers. Along with that, there's some organization in the state, it's the Healthy Eating Active Living New Hampshire group, which is providing some funding for projects focusing on improving healthy eating and active living opportunities in towns in New Hampshire. This year, the first round of funding, there are going to be some community block grants, and those grants are going to extend over a 3-year period. Some of the criteria is such that the community itself has to apply for the grant. So that's where we can provide some resource in terms of helping to develop a project that might be fundable, and some ideas about projects. We've been in contact with Parks and Rec, and I talked with Darryl this morning and some other groups in the community to see if we can assist creating a fundable project that might serve the Plymouth community. So that's kind of where we are. I just wanted to share that with you and answer any questions you might have. And we're going to be doing the Plymouth Resource Assessment, inviting residents in the community to help in the end of February, early part of March, while there's still snow on the ground. And then another when the snow's gone. So certainly different perspectives, and I'm sure that there'll be lots of information to share with you.
Well, thank you, Deborah. I think I read something that you had sent to the
I did. I sent a letter
outline.
letting the select board know that we were going to be doing it, and I just wanted to show up and answer any questions before we actually got started.
Well, I think it's a wonderful idea. Thank you for being available to help us.
Now, how was Plymouth, Romney, and Warren selected? What was the criteria for that?
Well, Plymouth was where the university is, and it kind of serves as the host town for the university, so it actually is serving as our pilot project. The funding was for actually Romney and Warren, and we're doing Plymouth out of our own funding. So we're adding Plymouth as kind of a thank you for Plymouth hosting the university. Basically, we're doing the Plymouth community with our own dollars. And then Romney and Warren was selected because of different aspects of those communities. Romney, because of its proximity to Plymouth, actually benefits in many ways from the Plymouth community. And it is perceived as a community, a rural community that has some attributes because of its proximity to Plymouth that other rural communities may not have. So access to resources that other communities may not have access to. Warren, because of its location, but it's fairly matched in terms of size and demographic population to Romney, was a matched community that is a more remote rural community. Has attributes in the community that may be perceived as resources, and at the same time there are some barriers because of its remote location. So there were some questions that we needed to ask about communities, and then when we matched the two communities, those two were the most closely matched for the work that we were doing. All of the information from all three of the communities is going to inform a bigger model of activity-friendly rural communities. So what does it look like to be a healthy rural community, and what resources in the community are indicative of a healthy community?
Very good.
It's very exciting.
It is exciting. Yeah.
Nice.
Great.
Anybody have any questions? Well, thank you for coming and informing us, and this is great.
Great,
So,
thank you.
Thanks for including Plymouth.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other public comments? If none, we'll be going into non-public in accordance with RSA 91-8:3, Roman numeral 2C, personnel.
Move that we go into non-public session, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Seconded by Charlie. John? Charlie, Butch, yes. Patrice? Dale?
Thank you all for coming out
Yes.
in the cold.